Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to move, install, and just generally manipulate outlets. I've got a few outlets in my shop that I'm not really liking where I put them, so I just want to change them around. I don't have a lot of experience with electrical outlets, but I wired this whole garage myself, and I'm hoping that if by watching this video, you might feel confident taking on one of these jobs yourself. So let me show you what I'm looking at. So if you're subscribed to my channel, you probably know that I built this garage myself and it's a work in progress. So that's why things kind of aren't totally set up right now. I just made this bench and it's going to be my workshop bench. And part of the reason why I love DIY stuff like this and doing it myself as opposed to hiring someone is because I can tweak things as I go. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I wasn't sure where exactly I wanted the bench when I first put it in, but now that I've settled on this spot and having a nice long bench, I'm recognizing that putting the outlets down below was probably not the best idea. So I ran 2 circuits. There's one on the right side of the bench and then one on the left side of the bench. So this is where the circuit's coming down right here for circuit number 2. And then over here, right behind the bench, that is the last outlet back there on circuit number 1. So my plan, what I'm going to do is move these 2 outlets up. I'm also going to add another outlet on that circuit to be right below the window, which is where the cavity is going to be moved to. And then finally, I'm going to add another outlet right here so that it's above the bench and then raise these up. This storage system is going to have to move all the way over to the wall, or it might even go away or be trimmed down. I built that for the last space that I was working in, and I'm not sure if it really fits. So that's the plan. First step is I got to get all of this stuff cleared out and out of the way so I have a lot of space to work with. Okay, so I got everything out of the way. It's a nice clean workspace and we can get started. So the tools that we're going to use on this project, I'll put links to all of these in the description. I've got an outlet tester. This can show us if we've wired it correctly, as well as whether or not there's electricity going to it. Outlet cover. You need a utility knife, screwdriver. This is a wire stripper, and make sure when you get it that the correct gauge is listed here. We're working from a 20 amp circuit using 12 gauge Romex wire. So as you can see, or I hope you can see, that there is an actual 12 on here, which is what we're going to use to strip our wires. You need some needle nose pliers. I'm going to use a drill just for ease, but you could get by with a screwdriver. Wing nuts are important. This is how we're going to connect the wires together. And you need to make sure that you're using the correct kind. It's listed here on the side. And you can see, since we're using 12 gauge, it lines right up with the red. Also down here, it kind of lists what you can connect together. And we're good to connect a few 12 gauge wires using these red wing nuts. I've got a single gang box, a couple of them actually, for if we want to add outlets. And then of course some gloves if you are so inclined. All right, I'm going to turn off the circuit breaker and let's get started. Before we go any further, I just want to really highlight that if this isn't something you're comfortable doing, hire an electrician. I'm not a certified electrician, and although I have some wiring experience, I am definitely not an expert. But overall, I'd say that wiring outlets like this is a fairly simple job. So if you are wanting to just jump into doing electrical yourself, this might be a good place to start. Absolutely make sure that your circuit is turned off before you do anything. So the first thing I'm going to do is just mark out my locations, and my workbench is 42 inches high because I'm a really tall guy. Doesn't really matter where you put them as long as you make it equal. I'm going to go with about 48 inches and we'll go down the line. Okay, so I figured out where I'm going to put them and I made a little mark. I've done it down the line. And that's where they're gonna go. Typically, what I like to do with these is line up one of these little lines with the line just so that they're all even. So I'm gonna line up this one Should have also noted another tool you'll need is a hammer. I think that goes without saying. So I'm just gonna line this right up. It's gonna stick out a little bit more because of when you put the drywall in, it'll come out perfectly. And then I'm just gonna nail this in. That's perfect. So now I gotta punch out the knockouts. Just gonna use my screwdriver for that. There we go. Okay, so this is how you're gonna wire it. This one is the hot wire. This is the one that the electricity is coming in, and this one's the one that's passing it on to the next outlet. The first thing you're gonna wanna do is get the Romex off. Again, this is 12-2 Romex because we're running out of a 20 amp circuit. Now, you gotta be careful when you cut these not to cut the internal casing of the wires, but when I first started this, I was extremely careful, and as I slowly moved on, you can really be pretty aggressive. As long as you don't cut like sideways or something, you should be fine. I think you actually probably have a higher chance of cutting your hand than you do the actual wires inside, but this is what we are going to do. I'm just gonna slice down through, making sure not to cut my hand. And you open it up, and you'll see a black, white, and ground wire. White is neutral, black is hot, and we'll cut it like that. And you want to have, I mean, I guess a good starting place is about 6 inches of wire here. That's probably even a little bit excessive. You just got to make sure that when you push all this stuff back in the box, that you're going to have enough room for everything. So we'll do the next one. Be careful again, not to cut your hand. And as you can see, I'm cutting almost all the way through, and it's not damaging these wires at all. So you can be pretty aggressive with it. And we'll peel it back. Next step is to trim the wires. We're going to be using our wire strippers, and again, as I said in the beginning, we're using 12 gauge, so you want to line it up with the 12 gauge hole. That is the exact diameter of the inside of these wires. So about 5/8, half inch to about 5/8 off of these, and you can just strip them like so. These are kind of tricky at first. You can clamp down all the way, and that cuts the casing. And when you pull, and then just pull off, you might have to release a little bit to pull it off, but that's what's left. That's what you get. So I'm gonna do that for all of them. Okay, so now we have nicely stripped wires. If this were the last outlet in the chain, then this wouldn't be here, and you could simply hook this up to the outlet and be done. But since we want to pass the electricity on to the next outlet, we're going to have to do one extra step. So these outlets have 2 screws on each side. The brass ones are the hot wire, the black wires, the white ones are the neutral wires, and then the green, of course, is ground. The reason these switches have 2 is so that if you wanted to connect one of them to like a light switch or something, you could cut this tab and basically separate them and have it be controlled by a light switch. Now, it will work if you were to put both hots here and both neutrals here and just not use any wing nuts. It works fine. I don't think it's technically to code, and the reason for that is because if this failed, if this outlet failed, then all the other ones down the line also wouldn't work. So that's just something to think about. I'm not gonna do it that way. I'm gonna use wing nuts because that's the code, and I don't want that to happen if this breaks. So to accomplish this, we're gonna use pigtails, which means that I've cut 3 little pieces, 1 for each color, from a spare Romex, and we're gonna attach these together. You just have to insert them all into the wing nut, stick in the last one, make sure they're all good in there tight, and then just turn and they will clench them all together. And you just want to double check and make sure that each one is seated in there nicely. And what that's going to do is send in the electrical signal, and it's going to sort of split it off into 2 directions. So that way, if this outlet fails, electricity is still going to be going through to the other outlets. So I'm going to do that with the neutral wire too. The ground wire is slightly different. I'll show you what to do there. So with the ground wire, there's a couple of different ways that I've heard is okay to do it. One is to simply just really wrap this around here tight and to leave one side sticking out so that you can attach it to the outlet. I'm not sure if that's to code, but honestly, to me, that worked out for most of these as a more secure connection. I tested this out with a lot of them, and that's the method I preferred. However, I'm going to show you the right way to do this, and we're going to use copper crimped. So a copper crimp looks like this, and what we're going to do is take our 2 ground wires, and we're going to, before we even put it on, I'm going to rotate them around and get them pretty tight. There we go. So they're already connected pretty tight. Then I'm going to straighten this out and put this copper crimp on and just clamp it down. So that's secure, that's not going anywhere. And then after that, just for good measure, I'm going to wrap it around and twist it up, just so it's absolutely fully secured. So this is not going anywhere. From there, you can cut one side, and now the grounds are connected and you have a little bit of extension so that way you can attach it to the outlet. Our next step is that we have to put our outlets on. So we got our pigtails coming out, and what we're going to need to do is make little hooks on the ends of each of these so that they wrap around the screw. You want the orientation of the hooks to go in the same direction that you're going to screw it. So on these black wires, it's going to go like that, and we're going to screw it that way. To accomplish this, just take your wire and your needle nose pliers. And this is a little bit tricky to get just right. And I'll also say that the heavy duty outlets that I bought for some of these were significantly easier than these tamper proof ones. They just give you a little bit more room to work with, and I found them easier to connect, but these are okay too. They're not too difficult. Once you have that, you can lock it into place. That one went on pretty easy, and I'm gonna hold it tight. You can see even if I let go of it, it holds on to it. So I'm gonna hold it tight, and then we're just gonna tighten our screw. Now we're gonna do the same with the neutral wire and with the ground wire. Now this one too, keep in mind that it's gonna start at the top and go around this way because we're turning our screw like that. Got that hook. We're gonna turn it around and lock it into place. Lastly, we're gonna do our ground wire. Now this one's a little bit easier, just to wrap it around and make sure that it's connected. So I actually make the hook for this one a little bit bigger, like this. And that way, when you hook it in, you can take your needle nose pliers and really clamp it. Like that. So that's it. You're all done with the wiring part of it. Now it's just a matter of jamming it back in. This is where, too, as you get better and more comfortable with this, you can try to make your wires a little bit shorter. Just makes it easier to kind of ram everything in there. I think you'll notice, too, that the more wires and stuff you have in there, it can kind of make your outlets be a little bit angled. So just make sure that you're really pushing them back straight and that there's no pressure on one side of the outlet. And I'm going to use a drill to get it seated in there correctly. And then finally, you just put your faceplate on. Should go in pretty easily. So I've got the circuit all set up. I've got all the outlets right where I want them. And there's one final step I want to show you. It's that we're going to test the voltage. So this is a voltage tester. As you can see on the front, if you push the button, that tests our ground and makes sure that the ground fault protection is in order. Also, these indicators here will tell you if you have an issue with how you wired things up. So when I was wiring this garage, frequently I would have something like open neutral, and that meant that somewhere along the chain, the neutral was broken or the neutral wasn't wired correctly, and I had to go through each individual outlet and problem solve where that was. So this makes it really easy. Number one, you can use it just to see if there's electricity coming through. But number two, you can use it to figure out problems in your work, and it's not the end of the world. You can turn on your power and put this in and test everything and make sure everything's all set. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug this in and see if it works. And there we go. So when these two orange lights light up at the bottom, you can see that it says, or I hope you can see that it says right here at the bottom that those two orange lights mean that it's all set, it's correct. And I'm probably gonna go through and test everything, but let's test our ground fault protection. And we're all set. I could hear the circuit go off behind me. So we're good, it's all set. I'm gonna go ahead and finish off the rest of these, and then I'll put back the bench and show you what the final product looks like. So I've got everything cleaned up and my workbench right back where it's supposed to be. As you can see, everything looks so much better. These outlets are gonna be really useful right on top of my workbench, and I still have some lower ones around the shop, right underneath there, and then some over here. I'm gonna leave the French cleat system off for now because my next project is actually to move this out of the way and put in some insulation. So there you go, that's how you install outlets. I hope you found this video helpful and inspiring. If you felt hesitant about electrical, I would say that starting with just moving some outlets around or installing outlets is a really simple way to jump in. If you like this video, let me know in the comments section. If you saw something that I could be doing better, also let me know. I really appreciate the feedback. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I've got tons of videos that I'm planning for the next few months. I'm gonna be installing some insulation in my shop and actually putting in a mini split, because that's what this channel is all about, figuring out how to do things and doing things yourself. All right, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.